My 72nd birthday arrived like every other Tuesday morning, with the sound of my neighbor's lawnmower cutting through the early silence and the rich smell of brewing coffee drifting from my automatic machine in the kitchen. I had set the timer the night before, hoping against hope that someone might remember what day it was today. The house felt hollow and empty as I padded down the long hallway in my worn terry cloth slippers, past family photos that seemed to mock me with their frozen smiles from happier times. My children's faces stared back from carefully dusted frames, though they rarely called anymore except for perfunctory holiday check-ins. The kitchen table held yesterday's unopened mail, and I noticed immediately a cream-colored envelope with elegant handwritten script addressing me formally as Mrs. Catherine Morrison. Something about its weight and texture made my hands tremble slightly as I reached for my reading glasses. If you're dealing with family disappointment too, drop your city in the comments and subscribe for more stories that might surprise you completely. The envelope's mysterious presence suggested something far more significant than a typical greeting card. The morning sun streamed brilliantly through my delicate lace curtains as I methodically prepared breakfast for one person again, the same routine I had followed for countless mornings since my husband passed away 3 years ago. My daughter Sarah lived just 15 minutes away in her sprawling suburban home with the perfectly manicured lawn, while my son Michael had moved 3 hours north to Portland after his recent promotion at the engineering firm last year. They both maintained busy, successful lives with demanding careers and active children who barely knew their grandmother existed beyond holiday visits. I understood their priorities, really I did, but understanding didn't make the profound silence any less painful on the one day that should matter most to any mother. I cracked 2 eggs into the sizzling pan, though I would only eat one, and watched them bubble while thinking about birthdays from decades past when my kitchen overflowed with laughter, homemade cards, and genuine celebration. There was the surprise party they threw me at 45, and the elaborate family dinner at that expensive steakhouse when I turned 60. Those precious memories felt like scenes from someone else's life now. By 10 o'clock in the morning, I could no longer ignore the mysterious cream-colored envelope that sat propped against my favorite coffee mug like a silent sentinel waiting for attention. The return address showed only a post office box number in downtown Portland, which struck me as particularly odd since I didn't know anyone there besides Michael. And this certainly wasn't his familiar handwriting or usual communication style. The paper felt expensive and substantial between my fingers, heavy stock that spoke of importance and formality rather than casual correspondence. I carefully slid my silver letter opener beneath the sealed flap, taking care not to tear whatever precious contents might lay inside, and held my breath as documents spilled onto my clean kitchen table. What I discovered made me gasp audibly in my empty kitchen, the sound echoing off the walls. Inside was a formal legal document typed on official letterhead, along with a handwritten note in unfamiliar script that looked almost antique in its careful, deliberate formation. The law firm's name meant absolutely nothing to me, but the dollar amount typed in bold letters made my coffee mug slip from my trembling fingers and shatter against the linoleum floor. The legal document detailed a substantial inheritance from someone named Eleanor Hartwell, a woman whose name I didn't recognize despite racking my memory thoroughly for any possible connection to my past or present life. According to the formal letter written on expensive letterhead, Mrs. Hartwell had passed away peacefully 6 weeks ago and had specifically requested that I receive this generous bequest of $78,500. The number seemed impossibly large and impossibly real, representing more money than I had ever seen in one place, let alone attached to my own name in legal documents. The accompanying handwritten note, penned in careful cursive that reminded me distinctly of my grandmother's generation, explained that Eleanor had been watching me for many months with growing admiration and respect. Those particular words sent an unexpected chill down my spine as I reread them twice, trying to process their unsettling implications. Mrs. Morrison, the note began in formal address, your consistent kindness to strangers has not gone unnoticed by those who still believe deeply in human decency and compassion. Had someone been secretly following me, studying my daily routines, documenting my interactions with neighbors and strangers throughout the community? The thought felt both flattering and deeply unsettling. The handwritten note continued in Eleanor's elegant, old-fashioned script, describing specific instances of behavior that she had apparently witnessed firsthand during her mysterious observation period. Every Tuesday morning when you walk to Miller's Market for groceries, you consistently stop to help Mrs. Chen with her heavy bags. You never ask for thanks, never expect recognition, never hurry past when someone clearly needs assistance. I dropped heavily into my kitchen chair, my mind spinning wildly with the realization that my most ordinary automatic actions had been under careful surveillance. Mrs. Chen was the elderly Chinese woman who lived in the small duplex near the market, always struggling with grocery bags that seemed far too heavy for her arthritic hands and bent shoulders. I helped her because it seemed natural and human, the kind of basic courtesy my mother had taught me to provide without thinking twice about it. I never imagined anyone was watching those brief, simple interactions, and certainly never expected them to result in financial reward for what felt like elementary human decency. The inheritance letter made my small acts of kindness sound almost heroic, which felt strange and deeply uncomfortable. My phone buzzed insistently against the kitchen counter at exactly 11:15, Sarah's distinctive ringtone piercing the morning quiet with its urgent electronic melody that always made me jump slightly. I fumbled for the device, still deeply shaken by the envelope's extraordinary contents and struggling to process what I had just discovered about this mysterious inheritance. "Hi, Mom." Her voice carried that familiar rushed quality, like she was already mentally organizing her next obligation while talking to me. "Happy birthday! Sorry I'm calling so late this morning, but Tyler had soccer practice at 8 and Emma had a dentist appointment at 9:30. The words tumbled out in practiced efficiency, a mechanical recital of her children's demanding schedules that somehow took precedence over acknowledging my special day properly. "We're thinking about maybe stopping by this weekend if we can work it around swimming lessons and Dave's golf tournament." I held the legal document carefully in my free hand, its life-changing implications swirling through my thoughts like a whirlwind. Part of me desperately wanted to tell her about the inheritance immediately, but something indefinable held me back from sharing this miraculous news. After Sarah hung up with casual promises to call later that felt hollow and obligatory rather than genuine, I found myself staring intensely at the mysterious inheritance document again, reading every word multiple times. The law firm's phone number was printed clearly at the top in professional lettering, practically begging me to call immediately for verification of what seemed too extraordinary to be true. But something about the timing felt too perfect, too carefully orchestrated, like divine intervention arriving exactly when I needed it most desperately. My birthday, my children's predictable forgetfulness, this incredible windfall appearing like a gift from heaven itself. I walked slowly to my living room window and peered across the street at Mrs. Chen's modest duplex, where her small but meticulously maintained garden displayed rows of vegetables growing in perfectly neat lines despite the cramped space available. I had helped her carry heavy seed packets and bags of fertilizer just last month, watching her arthritic hands struggle with simple tasks that came easily to younger people. The inheritance letter had specifically mentioned my Tuesday walks, my consistent assistance to neighbors, my quiet acts of kindness that I had never considered particularly noble or worthy of special recognition. Michael called at precisely noon, his voice booming enthusiastically through the speaker with the characteristic energy and warmth that had always distinguished him from his more reserved and cautious sister. "Mom, happy birthday!" He sounded genuinely pleased and excited to be calling, which warmed my heart considerably more than I had expected after Sarah's perfunctory and rushed check-in earlier. "Sorry I can't be there today to celebrate with you properly, but I sent something special that should arrive by evening delivery. Lisa and the kids made you a video that'll make you cry happy tears, I absolutely promise." His enthusiastic mention of a delivery made me glance automatically toward the front door, wondering what other surprises this already extraordinary and life-changing day might bring to my doorstep. Unlike Sarah's hurried efficiency and obvious distraction, Michael had inherited my natural tendency to linger over conversations, to actually listen carefully and respond thoughtfully to what was being said. We talked for 20 comfortable minutes about his recent promotion at work, his daughter's beautiful piano recital last weekend, his son's remarkable success in Little League Baseball this season. He never mentioned my specific age directly, but he remembered important details from our last conversation 3 weeks ago. As Michael and I chatted warmly about family news and his various work challenges, I kept the inheritance letter folded carefully in my lap, its weight both literal and metaphorical, pressing insistently against my consciousness throughout our conversation. Should I tell him immediately about this unexpected windfall that had arrived like a birthday miracle from heaven? The question gnawed persistently at me throughout our cheerful exchange about ordinary life events and family updates. He was discussing his detailed plans to visit next month when suddenly I heard myself interrupting him mid-sentence without warning. "Michael, something absolutely extraordinary happened today. I received a substantial inheritance from a complete stranger." The words tumbled out before I could stop them, and I heard his sharp intake of breath across the phone line. "Mom, that sounds exactly like a sophisticated scam targeting elderly people. Please tell me you didn't give anyone your bank information or social security number." His immediate concern and protective instincts touched me deeply, even as I tried to explain that this seemed legitimate and substantial. "How much money are we talking about?" he asked with growing alarm and suspicion. When I mentioned the $78,000 figure, he went completely silent for several long moments. After Michael's call ended with urgent promises to drive down immediately after work to personally examine these inheritance documents that had worried him throughout the afternoon, I made a decision that surprised even me. Instead of immediately calling the law firm to verify the inheritance's legitimacy and begin the claiming process, I folded the documents carefully and placed them in my kitchen drawer beneath the clean dish towels where I kept important papers safe. Something about rushing eagerly to claim the money felt fundamentally wrong, almost greedy, like I would be betraying whatever admirable qualities Eleanor Hartwell had apparently seen in my character and daily behavior. If this mysterious woman had truly been watching me carefully and studying my actions over many months, then my response to her extraordinary gift should reflect the same values and principles she had supposedly admired enough to reward financially. I needed time to think deeply, to process what this inheritance meant beyond the obvious financial implications and life-changing possibilities. The afternoon stretched ahead empty as usual, but now it carried a weight and significance I hadn't expected when I woke up this morning. This was rapidly becoming the most memorable and meaningful birthday I'd experienced in many years. I made myself a simple lunch of tomato soup and saltine crackers, trying to imagine realistically what I would actually do with $78,000 if the inheritance proved completely genuine and legitimate. The possibilities felt overwhelming and almost paralyzing after so many years of careful budgeting and modest dreams shaped by limited retirement income. Pay off the remaining mortgage balance and own my house free and clear for the first time? Finally take that long postponed trip to Arizona to visit my sister Ruth, who had been extending invitations for 3 years? Set aside substantial college funds for grandchildren who rarely called but would surely appreciate the financial assistance when the time came. Perhaps donate generously to the local food bank where I volunteered occasionally, or contribute significantly to the library's children's reading program that served so many families in our community. Each possibility carried profound emotional weight that went far beyond simple dollar amounts and practical considerations. This money could represent complete freedom from financial worry, the ability to be genuinely generous with others, or simply the security of knowing I wouldn't become a burden to my children in my later years. At 2:30 in the afternoon, my doorbell chimed with an unfamiliar melody that I rarely heard since most visitors called ahead to announce their arrival properly. I wasn't expecting anyone today, and deliveries usually came much earlier in the morning when I was more alert and prepared for interruptions to my routine. Through the front door peephole, I saw a young woman in a crisp navy business suit holding a professional clipboard and expensive-looking briefcase, appearing competent but noticeably nervous as she shifted her weight from foot to foot. She appeared to be in her early 30s with carefully styled brown hair and wire-rimmed glasses that gave her a scholarly, trustworthy appearance. "Mrs. Morrison?" she asked politely when I opened the door cautiously, keeping the chain lock securely engaged for safety. "My name is Jennifer Walsh, and I represent the law firm of Hartwell Davidson and Associates." I believe you received our correspondence today regarding Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell's estate. My heart hammered violently against my ribs like a trapped bird desperately seeking escape. The inheritance was completely real, verified by this woman's professional presence on my doorstep, not some elaborate scam as Michael had immediately feared. Jennifer's unexpected presence made everything feel suddenly official and intimidating in ways that simply reading documents alone had not accomplished successfully. I was hoping we could discuss the bequest in person, she continued with a warm, reassuring smile that eased some of my growing anxiety, and answer any questions you might have about the complex legal process involved. I invited her inside after she carefully wiped her feet and commented politely on my small but well-maintained garden, noting specifically the late-blooming roses that I tended with such devoted care. Her professional courtesy mixed seamlessly with genuine warmth, exactly the kind of person Eleanor might have chosen as her personal messenger and trusted representative. We settled comfortably in my living room, where afternoon sunlight streamed through delicate lace curtains, casting intricate patterns on the coffee table where I served tea in my good china cups reserved for special occasions. Jennifer opened her briefcase with practiced precision, revealing multiple copies of legal documents, several professional photographs, and what appeared to be a thick journal bound in soft brown leather. Mrs. Hartwell was quite specific about how this entire process should unfold, she began gently. Jennifer placed the leather journal on my coffee table between us with reverent care, treating it like a precious historical artifact that deserved special attention and respect. She wanted you to understand not just the gift itself, but the detailed reasoning behind her decision to choose you specifically among all possible candidates. The journal's cover was worn smooth by frequent handling, suggesting Eleanor had spent considerable time writing and reviewing its contents over many months. This contains her meticulous observations over the past 14 months. She documented every single act of kindness she witnessed, every moment of selfless behavior that caught her attention and convinced her you deserved recognition. My hands shook uncontrollably as I reached for the journal, afraid of what intimate details about my daily life I might discover within its carefully written pages. The first page contained my name, written in the same careful script as the morning's note, followed by a specific date from over a year ago that I didn't immediately remember. The entry described in detail my helping Mrs. Chen on a particularly windy Tuesday morning when her grocery bags had torn completely, spilling contents across the sidewalk. Mrs. Hartwell moved to Portland from here approximately 18 months ago, Jennifer explained patiently as I flipped through pages filled with detailed observations about my daily routines and neighborhood interactions. Her severe arthritis made independent living increasingly difficult and painful, but she adamantly refused to burden her adult nieces with demanding caregiving responsibilities. Maple Street was just 4 blocks from my house, which explained perfectly how she might have noticed my routine walks to Miller's Market and other regular neighborhood destinations. The journal entries painted an incredibly detailed picture of my daily life that felt both accurate and strangely intimate, like reading about myself through someone else's observant eyes. October 15th, helped elderly man retrieve scattered groceries from parking lot, stayed 20 minutes to ensure nothing was lost. November 3rd, shoveled Mrs. Patterson's walkway without being asked, also cleared her front steps and porch. December 20th, delivered homemade cookies to 3 neighboring houses, spent time talking with lonely residents. Each entry included the exact time, weather conditions, and Eleanor's emotional response to witnessing these ordinary moments that I barely remembered performing. She called you her everyday angel, Jennifer said softly, her voice filled with the same reverence she might use in church during prayer. She wrote that you restored her faith in human decency when she needed it most during a difficult transition period. The words brought unexpected tears to my eyes, partly from being seen and appreciated, partly from sadness that Eleanor had felt her faith in humanity slipping away. As Jennifer continued reading selected entries from Eleanor's comprehensive journal, I felt overwhelmed by this intimate portrait of my own life captured by a stranger's observant eyes. She had documented moments I barely remembered, kindnesses I considered automatic rather than exceptional acts worthy of special notice or recognition. The entry from March 8th described how I had waited 20 extra minutes at the bus stop to help a confused teenager find the right route to the community college, offering encouragement about his nervousness and confusion. I remembered the incident vaguely, but Eleanor had recorded not just my actions, but my patient demeanor and specific encouraging words I had used. The observation that hurt most was Eleanor's note about my mother. Written in careful script along the margin of an April entry, Eleanor had penned, "Your mother raised you right," after describing how I'd helped a young father whose toddler had fallen on the playground, comforting both child and parent with gentle efficiency and natural compassion. The comment stung because my mother had passed away 5 years ago, taking with her the last person who consistently remembered my birthday without prompting and who noticed when I did small good things. Eleanor's journal suggested that maybe my mother's lessons had taken root more deeply than I realized during those difficult years of caregiving and loss. Maybe kindness was its own form of legacy, passed between generations and then between strangers in small moments that nobody else bothered to notice or record for posterity. Reading about myself through Eleanor's eyes made me see patterns in my behavior that I had never recognized before, a consistency of character that apparently stood out to someone watching carefully. "There's something else you should know about Mrs. Hartwell's background," Jennifer said, her professional demeanor softening into something more personal and reflective. She had no children of her own, never married, and devoted her entire adult life to teaching elementary school for 42 years until mandatory retirement. Jennifer paused to arrange several black and white photographs on my coffee table, images I didn't recognize, but that somehow felt familiar in their composition and subject matter. When she moved to assisted living, she felt forgotten by the world, invisible in the way that elderly people often become once they're no longer actively contributing to society. The photographs showed various scenes around my neighborhood, from what appeared to be Eleanor's observation period, capturing moments I had lived without knowing they were being documented for posterity. There was Mrs. Chen smiling as I carried her groceries, an elderly man gratefully accepting my assistance with a dropped wallet, children laughing as I returned their runaway soccer ball. In each image, I looked content and purposeful, engaged in ordinary moments that Eleanor had somehow transformed into evidence of character. Jennifer reached into her briefcase and withdrew a sealed manila envelope, smaller than the one I'd received that morning, but equally formal in its presentation. Mrs. Hartwell also recorded a video message before she passed away. She specifically requested that you watch it only after we'd discussed the inheritance thoroughly, and you'd had time to read through her journal observations. The envelope contained a USB drive and handwritten instructions for accessing the message on my computer, written in Eleanor's distinctive script. Technology wasn't my strongest suit, but my grandchildren had taught me basic computer skills during their rare visits when they needed to show me photos or videos. The weight of the USB drive felt significant in my palm, like holding someone's final words before they could speak them aloud. She also left very specific instructions about the money, Jennifer continued, consulting her detailed notes. The inheritance comes with certain expectations, not legal requirements exactly, but strong suggestions for how it might be used. The phrase, "continue her mission," resonated deeply when Jennifer explained Eleanor's hopes for the inheritance money, suggesting this gift wasn't an ending, but the beginning of something much larger than personal financial gain. She wanted to start a movement of recognizing everyday kindness, Jennifer explained, using financial rewards to encourage more people to notice and acknowledge the good that happens around them constantly. The concept felt both inspiring and slightly overwhelming, transforming my unexpected windfall into a responsibility I hadn't anticipated when I first opened the cream-colored envelope. Eleanor had apparently spent months developing a systematic approach to identifying and rewarding kindness, with detailed criteria for what constituted worthy behavior and specific guidelines for how recipients should use their inheritances. "You're not obligated to participate," Jennifer assured me, but she hoped you would consider becoming part of a network of people committed to making goodness visible and celebrated, rather than overlooked. The invitation felt like being asked to join a secret society dedicated to improving humanity one small act at a time. My front door burst open at 4 o'clock without warning, startling both Jennifer and me from our deep conversation about Eleanor's philosophical mission. Sarah's voice echoed through the house with uncharacteristic urgency that immediately put me on alert. "Mom, are you here? Why didn't you answer your phone?" She appeared in the living room doorway, taking in the scene with obvious confusion and growing concern. Jennifer's briefcase, scattered legal documents, photographs, and formal business atmosphere clearly weren't what Sarah expected to find during what was supposed to be a surprise birthday visit. "I wanted to bring your birthday cake early since we can't stay for dinner tonight," Sarah continued, clutching a white bakery box while studying Jennifer's professional appearance with suspicious eyes. "Who's this?" The question carried protective undertones, as if she'd caught me in the middle of some elaborate financial scam targeting vulnerable elderly people. I introduced Jennifer carefully, watching Sarah's expression shift from confusion to skepticism to growing alarm. Jennifer handled Sarah's sudden appearance and obvious suspicion with impressive grace and professional composure, immediately standing to introduce herself properly and explain her presence in my living room. "Your mother has inherited a substantial sum from someone who greatly admired her character," she said diplomatically, choosing her words carefully to avoid inflaming Sarah's protective instincts. "I'm here to ensure she understands all aspects of the bequest before making any decisions." Sarah's eyebrows shot upward at the word substantial, and she moved closer to examine the legal documents scattered across my coffee table. Her business background made her naturally suspicious of unexpected windfalls, especially ones involving elderly people who might be vulnerable to sophisticated scams. "How much money are we talking about?" she asked bluntly, her protective mode shifting into full investigative gear. When Jennifer mentioned the $78,000 figure, Sarah actually staggered backward and gripped the back of my sofa for support. "Mom, this has to be some kind of elaborate confidence game," Sarah declared with conviction, her voice rising with each word. "Nobody just gives away that kind of money to complete strangers, especially not without expecting something major in return." But as Jennifer guided her through Eleanor's journal entries, Sarah's skepticism slowly began to transform into something that looked almost like amazement, mixed with a growing sense of pride. She read each documented act of kindness aloud, her voice growing softer with every example of my unnoticed helpfulness. "I never knew you did all these things," Sarah admitted, looking up from the page describing my weekly visits to the nursing home where I read to residents with failing eyesight. "You never mentioned helping at the food bank or driving people to medical appointments when they had no other transportation." Her words stung because they highlighted how superficial our conversations had become over the years, focused on logistics and schedules rather than meaningful connections. The birthday cake Sarah had brought sat forgotten on my kitchen counter as the three of us pored over Eleanor's meticulous documentation of my daily activities. Sarah continued reading journal entries with increasing wonder, occasionally pausing to ask questions about neighbors and situations she had never heard me mention in our brief weekly phone calls. Jennifer watched our interaction carefully, perhaps understanding that this inheritance was affecting much more than just my financial situation and had the potential to transform family relationships that had grown distant over time. Mrs. Hartwell believed that recognizing kindness encourages more of it, Jennifer said gently. When Sarah finished reading about my anonymous donations to the library's children's program, Jennifer continued, "She hoped this gift would inspire others to notice the everyday angels walking among them." Sarah's eyes welled with tears as she absorbed the implications of Eleanor's words and the depth of observation that had gone into documenting my character. This stranger had seen qualities in me that my own daughter had somehow missed. Michael arrived unexpectedly at 5:15, explaining that he'd rearranged his work schedule and driven down early to personally examine these inheritance documents that had worried him all afternoon. His face registered the same initial shock Sarah had experienced upon discovering Jennifer and the legal paperwork spread across my living room like evidence of some major life event. But where Sarah had reacted with immediate suspicion and protective concern, Michael responded with curiosity and growing excitement as he reviewed the documentation. "Mom, this is absolutely incredible," he said, after carefully examining each legal document and photograph. This woman basically created a scholarship program for being a decent human being. He sat cross-legged on the floor beside the coffee table, carefully examining each photograph Eleanor had taken during her observation period. "Look at this one," he said, holding up an image of me helping a young mother carry a stroller up the library steps. "I remember you telling me about that day. You said the mom looked exhausted and overwhelmed." Michael's memory of our conversation about the library incident touched me deeply, proving he had been listening even when I thought my stories about neighborhood encounters were boring him or taking up too much of his valuable time. Jennifer smiled as she watched my children's reactions unfold exactly as Eleanor might have hoped, perhaps seeing the inheritance plan working in ways that went far beyond simple financial assistance. "Eleanor understood that recognition changes everything," Jennifer explained. "When good people feel invisible and forgotten, they sometimes stop trying to help others. She wanted to prevent that from happening." As the afternoon dissolved into early evening, both my children remained at my house, something that hadn't happened on my birthday in over 5 years. Sarah called Dave to cancel their dinner plans, while Michael texted Lisa to explain his delayed return home. The inheritance had accomplished something I'd been unable to achieve through years of gentle hints and invitations. It had brought my family together on my birthday. Jennifer packed her briefcase methodically, but left Eleanor's journal and the USB drive containing the video message, treating these items like sacred artifacts that deserved special care and consideration. "Take your time processing everything," she said kindly as she prepared to leave. "The money isn't going anywhere, and Mrs. Hartwell specifically requested that you not feel pressured to make immediate decisions about how to use it." Her words carried the wisdom of someone who had probably guided other inheritance recipients through similar emotional journeys. After she left, the three of us sat in my living room with Sarah's birthday cake finally cut and shared among us. The simple vanilla cake with chocolate frosting tasted better than any expensive restaurant dessert because it represented time we were choosing to spend together rather than obligation grudgingly fulfilled. Sarah and Michael peppered me with questions about neighbors they'd never noticed, kindnesses they'd never witnessed, despite visiting my house regularly for years. Their sudden intense interest in my daily life felt like its own unexpected inheritance, perhaps more valuable than Eleanor's monetary gift. "Tell us about Mrs. Chen," Michael requested, settling back into the sofa cushions as if preparing for a long story. "What's she like? How long have you been helping her?" For the next hour, I found myself describing neighbors and community members that my children had never bothered asking about before today. Mrs. Patterson with her disabled husband and overgrown yard. Tom at the grocery store who worked double shifts to support his family. The teenage mother who took the bus to community college while her own mother watched the baby. Each person represented a connection, a small thread in the fabric of community life that I had been weaving without conscious awareness. My children listened with the kind of attention I had craved for years, asking follow-up questions and showing genuine interest. "We should watch the video message together," Michael suggested, as we finished our cake and moved the laptop computer to my dining room table where we could all see the screen clearly. "This Eleanor sounds like someone who chose her words very carefully, and I have a feeling this message is going to be important." Sarah agreed, helping me insert the USB drive and navigate to the correct file with more patience than she usually showed when teaching me technology. The file was labeled simply "For Catherine Morrison" in a folder that contained no other documents. I clicked on it with trembling fingers, and Eleanor's face appeared on my screen exactly as I had imagined her from her handwriting. She looked to be in her early 70s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, silver hair styled simply, and a warm smile that made her seem like someone I would have enjoyed knowing personally. Her voice was steady and melodious when she began speaking directly to the camera. "Hello, Catherine." Eleanor's recorded voice filled my dining room with surprising warmth and intimacy. "If you're watching this, then my plan has worked perfectly, and I hope my gift hasn't overwhelmed you too much." She smiled directly into the camera as if she could see us gathered around my laptop, 3 generations connected by her thoughtful intervention. "I also hope your family is there to share this moment with you, because recognition is always sweeter when witnessed by people who love us." Sarah gasped softly at Eleanor's uncanny prediction. Somehow this woman had anticipated not just my reaction to the inheritance, but my children's presence during this pivotal moment. I spent 42 years teaching children, Eleanor continued, and I learned that character reveals itself in small moments when nobody thinks they're being watched. You consistently chose kindness over convenience, service over selfishness, compassion over indifference. You reminded me that goodness exists without recognition or reward, which made me want to provide both. Eleanor's video message lasted nearly 15 minutes, during which she explained her life philosophy and detailed reasoning for choosing me as an inheritance recipient. When good people feel invisible and forgotten, they sometimes stop trying to make a difference, she said, looking directly into the camera with earnest intensity. I don't want that to happen to you, Catherine, because the world needs more people who help others without expecting anything in return. Her words hit me like gentle but firm slaps, addressing fears about growing old and irrelevant that I'd never voiced to anyone, not even myself. The money comes with one simple request, Eleanor continued, her voice taking on a more serious tone. Use some of it to continue noticing and helping others, but also use some for yourself. Take that trip you've been postponing. Buy something beautiful that brings you joy. Celebrate the wonderful person you are. My children watched in rapt silence, tears streaming down both their faces as Eleanor's message continued. When the video ended, we sat in contemplative silence for several long minutes, each processing Eleanor's words and their implications for our family relationships. Michael was the first to speak, his voice rough with emotion and what sounded like genuine remorse. Mom, I'm deeply ashamed that it took a complete stranger to make me see what kind of remarkable person you are. Sarah nodded agreement, wiping her eyes with tissues from my kitchen counter. We've been so focused on our own busy lives that we stopped really seeing you, she added with painful honesty. Eleanor noticed things about your character that we missed completely, and we live right here in the same town. Their words carried emotional weight I hadn't expected, acknowledgments of distance and neglect that I thought I had imagined or exaggerated in my lonelier moments. The inheritance had somehow accomplished more than Eleanor could have planned, bringing my family together in ways that years of birthday celebrations and holiday gatherings had failed to achieve. We talked until nearly midnight, sharing memories and making plans that felt genuine rather than obligatory for the first time in years. Sarah suggested we start a family tradition of volunteering together at the food bank, where I occasionally helped serve meals to homeless individuals and struggling families. Michael proposed monthly dinners where we would actually listen to each other's stories, instead of just exchanging logistical information about schedules and obligations. I want to meet Mrs. Chen, Sarah declared with sudden determination, and Mrs. Patterson and Tom from the grocery store, and all these people who matter to you. The idea of introducing my children to my neighborhood connections felt both wonderful and slightly terrifying. What if they found these relationships as unremarkable as I had always assumed they were? But Eleanor's journal had proven that ordinary kindness was worth documenting and celebrating, which meant it was worth sharing with family members who had forgotten how to see beyond their own immediate concerns. The following Tuesday morning, I walked to Miller's Market as usual, but everything felt different under Eleanor's posthumous influence. Mrs. Chen was struggling with her grocery bags at the bus stop, and as I approached to offer assistance, I noticed a young woman watching from across the street with obvious interest. She had a small notebook in her hand and appeared to be writing something down with careful attention to detail. After I helped Mrs. Chen reach her door safely, the young woman approached me with a shy smile and nervous energy. "Excuse me," she said, "but I've been watching you help Mrs. Chen every week for months. My grandmother lives in Portland now, and seeing your kindness reminded me to call her more often than I have been." She handed me a folded piece of paper with a phone number written in neat script. "I wrote down her contact information in case you ever wanted to talk to someone who understands about helping elderly neighbors." The note was written in careful handwriting that reminded me of Eleanor's distinctive script, and I wondered if kindness might be more contagious than I had ever imagined possible. That afternoon, I called the number the young woman had given me and found myself talking to Margaret, an 84-year-old woman who had also received an unexpected inheritance. Eleanor had a network, Margaret explained with a laugh that sounded like wind chimes dancing in a gentle breeze. She corresponded with at least 6 other elderly women in different cities, all of us watching for angels hiding in plain sight among ordinary people. The revelation stunned me into momentary silence. Eleanor hadn't just noticed my behavior randomly or accidentally. She had been part of some informal organization dedicated to recognizing everyday goodness and rewarding it in ways that would encourage more of the same behavior. There are others like us, Margaret continued with growing excitement. People who received Eleanor's gifts, people who are now tasked with continuing her mission. Margaret invited me to a gathering the following weekend in Portland, where I would meet other inheritance recipients and learn about Eleanor's broader vision for creating positive change through recognition and financial reward. We call ourselves Eleanor's Angels, she explained, though that name might change as more people join our mission. The inheritance was rapidly becoming something much larger than a simple financial windfall, transforming into participation in a movement I didn't fully understand yet, but felt drawn to support. I spent the rest of the week researching Eleanor Hartwell online, piecing together the remarkable story of her life and discovering her involvement with multiple charitable organizations. Newspaper archives revealed her decades of community service, and several obituaries mentioned her Angel Project in vague terms that suggested something significant but secretive. The more I learned, the more I realized that my inheritance was both deeply personal and part of something systematically designed to create ripple effects of goodness throughout multiple communities. Jennifer called Thursday evening to check on my emotional adjustment process and provide additional information about Eleanor's comprehensive plan for sustained kindness recognition. She spent the last 8 years of her life developing this program, Jennifer explained during our lengthy conversation. You're part of her legacy now, whether you fully realize it or not. She mentioned that Eleanor had left similar bequests to 11 other people across 3 states, each chosen through months of careful observation and documentation. Saturday's drive to Portland gave me time to process the week's revelations about Eleanor's extensive network and systematic approach to rewarding kindness. Sarah had insisted on accompanying me, claiming she needed to see this Angel Project for herself and ensure I wasn't being drawn into anything questionable or potentially harmful. We found the meeting location easily, a small community center where 12 other people had gathered, each clutching similar legal documents and copies of Eleanor's detailed journal observations. Ages ranged from early 30s to nearly 90, representing Eleanor's diverse observation subjects from different economic backgrounds and life situations. Margaret welcomed me with a warm embrace, immediately introducing me to others who shared remarkably similar stories of unexpected recognition for ordinary decency. James had been helping homeless individuals find shelter for 3 years before Eleanor noticed his efforts. Rosa had been delivering meals to homebound neighbors since her own retirement from teaching. Patricia had been reading to children at the library every Wednesday afternoon for over 2 years. Each person had been living quietly, compassionate lives, thinking their efforts went completely unnoticed by anyone beyond the immediate recipients. Eleanor's genius lay in recognizing that invisible goodness deserved both acknowledgement and amplification through her carefully planned inheritance system. During the meeting, we learned that Eleanor had left detailed instructions for continuing her mission beyond her death through a sustainable network of kindness observers. Each recipient received not just money, but responsibility for observing and eventually nominating future angels in our communities. She had created a sustainable system for recognizing kindness, funded by her life savings and designed to expand organically through our participation. The legal framework was surprisingly sophisticated, involving a trust that would provide smaller bequests to people we identified over the coming years. She wanted to start a movement, explained James, who had received his inheritance 6 months earlier. The money is just the catalyst. The real gift is learning to see goodness everywhere and making sure it gets acknowledged. We spent hours sharing stories, planning observation strategies, and discussing how to identify candidates for future recognition. By the meeting's end, I understood that Eleanor hadn't just given me money. She had inducted me into a secret society of kindness ambassadors. The drive home found Sarah unusually quiet, processing what she'd witnessed at the community center. "Mom," she finally said as we reached the highway, "I want to help with this project. I mean really help, not just offer support and then get too busy with other obligations to follow through." Her words carried unusual weight and sincerity, suggesting genuine commitment rather than polite enthusiasm that would fade with time. I've been thinking about what Eleanor wrote in that journal, how she noticed things about your character that even your own children missed completely. That's not the kind of person I want to be anymore. She outlined specific plans for involvement, including helping me establish a systematic approach to observing our community and documenting acts of kindness according to Eleanor's detailed criteria. Her business skills would be invaluable for managing the record-keeping requirements and developing sustainable methods for identifying future recipients. For the first time in years, Sarah and I were collaborating on something meaningful rather than just managing logistics around family obligations and scheduling conflicts. The inheritance was transforming more than just my bank account. It was rebuilding relationships that had grown distant through years of taking each other for granted. 3 weeks later, Michael drove down with his entire family for our first official Angel Project dinner, bringing Lisa and both children for an evening focused on Eleanor's mission. Lisa had prepared a detailed presentation about establishing similar programs in other communities, while my grandchildren had created colorful artwork depicting various acts of kindness they'd witnessed at school and in their neighborhood. The evening felt purposeful and energizing in ways that our previous family gatherings had never achieved, focused on something larger than individual concerns. We discussed establishing a local chapter of Eleanor's network, with Sarah handling administrative aspects and Michael managing community outreach through his professional connections in the business community. After dinner, we walked through my neighborhood together as a multi-generational family unit, and I pointed out the various locations where Eleanor had photographed me helping others during her observation period. "Grandma," my 10-year-old granddaughter said thoughtfully as we passed Mrs. Chen's house, "you're kind of famous for being nice to people." Her innocent observation captured something profound about Eleanor's gift and its unexpected consequences. Recognition had indeed changed how I saw myself and how my family perceived my daily activities. The inheritance had purchased not just financial security, but renewed family connection and a sense of purpose that extended far beyond personal benefit. "Can we help you look for more angels?" my grandson asked eagerly, clearly excited by the idea of participating in Eleanor's secret mission. That night, we established our family's commitment to continuing Eleanor's work, with each member taking responsibility for observing and documenting kindness in their respective communities and age groups. By my 73rd birthday, a full year after Eleanor's gift had arrived in that cream-colored envelope, I had identified and nominated 3 people for smaller bequests through the Angel Project Trust Fund. Mrs. Patterson, my next-door neighbor who had been caring for her disabled husband for 7 years without complaint or recognition. Tom, the grocery store clerk who always helped elderly customers reach high shelves and carry heavy bags to their cars without being asked. Maria, the young mother who volunteered at the elementary school despite working 2 jobs to support her family and attending community college classes. Each nomination required detailed documentation similar to Eleanor's journal, proving that her system for recognizing goodness was both replicable and sustainable across different observers. The Trust's board, composed entirely of previous inheritance recipients, had approved all 3 of my candidates for $1,000 recognition gifts. Watching their faces when they received Eleanor's posthumous acknowledgement of their character reminded me exactly why she had created this remarkable program. The money was meaningful to each recipient, but the recognition of their character proved transformational in ways that surprised everyone involved in the process. This year, both my children remembered my birthday without any reminding, arriving early with homemade gifts and genuine enthusiasm for celebrating together as an extended family. Sarah brought a professional photo album she'd compiled, documenting our Angel Project's first year of operation, including pictures from our community chapter's establishment and growth. Michael presented a beautifully bound booklet containing Eleanor's complete journal about my daily kindnesses, professionally printed and formatted like a real published work. "We thought you should have a permanent record of how she saw you," he explained with obvious pride, "and how we're learning to see you too after all these years." The gifts reflected thoughtfulness and effort rather than last-minute obligation, proving that Eleanor's influence extended far beyond the original inheritance recipients. During my birthday dinner, we discussed expanding the Angel Project to nearby communities and possibly creating a nonprofit organization to formalize Eleanor's mission on a larger scale. My birthday had become a celebration not just of my aging, but of purpose and connection that Eleanor's remarkable gift had restored to our family relationships. The evening included detailed reports from each family member about acts of kindness they had observed and documented in their respective environments. Sarah had identified a secretary at her office who quietly helped struggling co-workers with personal problems. Michael had noticed a construction worker who spent lunch breaks reading to children at a nearby daycare center. Even my grandchildren had compelling candidates, including a crossing guard who knew every student's name, and a cafeteria worker who saved extra food for hungry classmates. Eleanor's vision was multiplying through our family's participation, creating a network of observers committed to making goodness visible and celebrated rather than overlooked. As evening approached and my family prepared to leave after our extended birthday celebration, I walked to my kitchen drawer and withdrew the original cream-colored envelope that had arrived exactly 1 year ago. The legal documents were now filed safely with my important papers, but I had kept the envelope itself as a sacred reminder of how dramatically life could change in a single transformative moment. Eleanor's handwritten note was folded inside, her words about noticing everyday angels still legible despite repeated readings over the past 12 months. The envelope had become my own symbolic object, representing the moment when invisibility transformed into purpose, when forgotten kindness suddenly mattered enormously to someone who cared enough to document and reward it. I thought about Eleanor often, grateful for her monetary gift, but more importantly, grateful for her vision of a world where goodness received recognition and encouragement rather than being taken for granted or ignored completely. Tomorrow I would continue my Tuesday walk to Miller's Market, but now I walked as Eleanor's representative, tasked with noticing and eventually rewarding the angels hiding in plain sight around me every day. The Angel Project had taught me that kindness was indeed contagious, spreading through recognition and celebration rather than obligation or guilt-driven motivation. Eleanor's inheritance had given me more than money. It had given me a mission that connected me to my community and my family in ways I had never experienced before this transformative year. My children now called regularly, not from duty, but from genuine interest in my work identifying and documenting acts of everyday goodness that deserved acknowledgement. We had become partners in Eleanor's vision, collaborators in a movement that was slowly expanding beyond anything she might have originally imagined when she first conceived her Angel Project. The inheritance had transformed from a personal windfall into a family legacy, something we could build together and eventually pass on to future generations. If you've encountered unexpected kindness in your own community, share your city in the comments below and subscribe for more stories about how ordinary people create extraordinary change through simple acts of compassion. Sometimes the most powerful gifts come in cream-colored envelopes we never expected to receive, delivered by strangers who see qualities in us that we've forgotten to value in ourselves. Eleanor's gift taught me that being noticed for goodness can heal families, build communities, and create networks of people committed to making the world a little brighter for everyone. The Angel Project continues to grow, with new chapters forming in cities across the country as more people discover the joy of recognizing everyday heroes. Eleanor's vision lives on through each act of kindness we notice, document, and reward, proving that one person's dedication to celebrating goodness can create ripple effects that last far beyond their lifetime. My 73rd year has been filled with purpose I never expected, surrounded by family who finally sees me clearly, and community connections that Eleanor helped me recognize as precious rather than ordinary. The cream-colored envelope sits in my kitchen drawer still, a reminder that the most important gifts often arrive when we least expect them, from people who believe in our capacity for goodness, even when we've forgotten it ourselves. Each Tuesday morning when I walk to Miller's Market, I carry Eleanor's legacy with me, searching for the next everyday angel who deserves to be seen, acknowledged, and celebrated for the simple act of making the world a little more compassionate through their daily choices. This is how kindness multiplies, one observed act at a time, one recognized heart at a time, one grateful family at a time.